All right. Yeah. How you about Springs here, and it's allergy season coming, guys. This program is brought to you by
turn head. Some hoes wanna choose, but them bitches too scary. Your bitch chose me, you ain't a pimp, you a fairy. A pimp, not a simp. A pimp, not a simp. A pimp, not a simp. We eat so many shrimp, I got iodine poisoning. Baby, you been rolling solo, time to get down with the team. The grass is greener on that other side, if you know what I mean. I show you shit you never seen, the 7 wonders of the world. And I can make you the 8 if you wanna be my girl. I say my girl, I don't mean my woman, that ain't my style. Need a real street stalker, walk a green mile. Piling up the paper on the dining room table, cause you able to realize I'm the truth and not a fable. Baby, rockin' Russian sable, keep that chiller on the rack. What I look like with some $1,000 shit up on my back. I'm $1 million man, they need $1 billion bitch. Put my pimpin' in your life, watch your daddy get rich. Easy as ABC, simple as 1, 2, 3. Get down with UGK, Pimp CBU with B. Cause what's a hoe with no pimp, and what's a pimp with no hoe? Don't be a lame, you know the game and how it goes. We try to get toes. A pimp, not a simp. A pimp, not a simp. A pimp, not a simp. We eat so many shrimp, I got iodine poisoning.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Artie of Artie's Corporate Fiction. How you guys doing on this fantastic hump day? I have a very special show this evening. And with a special guest, and we're going to be talking about auditors. I feel like it's been an age and a half since I've been talking about First Amendment auditors. I feel like a lot of the channel has kind of gotten away from it, and mostly has been a lot of body cam footage and Sav sits. But we're gonna reintegrate ourselves into the auditing community, and I can't think of a better way to do that than to talk with Captain Kirk Driver, who is the named party in the Fifth Circuit court case Turner versus Driver. If you guys don't know about that case was initiated by his YouTube moniker is called the Batosai. Weeb, and he filed a lawsuit against Fort Worth PD, claiming that he had a First Amendment right to film the police. And in the Fifth Circuit case, the court they denied, they reversed the trial court's finding that the 2 officers were protected with qualified immunity, but they dismissed Captain Driver's portion of the case. However, the court did say, from here on out, there is a First Amendment protected right to film the police in public, subject to time, place, and manner restrictions. And tonight I have the captain here with me, and we're going to have like a kind of a discussion about that. So I want to go ahead and get you off of mute, and you can introduce yourself, Captain Driver.
Hey, how you doing, Artie?
Well, hey, I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate you, Doug, for helping setting this up for us. So what I think like I was telling you before the camera started, I wanted to. Can you give us a little bit of an introduction, like a little bit of your background, just so the audience can get comfortable with you?
All right. So my name's Kirk Driver. I'm a captain on the Fort Worth Police Department. I've been on the department 31 years. Currently, I'm over the traffic division. Most of my time's been in patrol. I've had a little bit of time in a few other units outside of there, but predominantly patrol. And where I'm at now is definitely one of the highlights. Being over traffic, they gave me the option of riding a motorcycle. I took it and got all the training, so I'm having a lot of fun. At the time of the case we're referencing, Turner versus Driver, I was actually I was a lieutenant, and I was working out of a patrol division but I was on special assignment working on a project of my own creation, which was a collaboration between the police department, social services, education, and employment services, targeting low-income communities, one apartment complex at a time, to address all their needs in one fell swoop. Go in, survey the community, each household, identify all those needs, and bring services to bear
Wow.
to those needs, with the goal of measuring to see, well, what does this do for crime? Does it lower the crime? And not just the robbing and stealing crime, but also like the domestic violence stuff, since you're taking away a lot of those factors of domestic violence. What does it do for elementary school test scores? What does this do for median income? Yada, yada. So I was working on that when I got a call that fateful day, if you will, that put me on the Google in the words of the elders. So there you have it.
Well, that sounds like a pretty strong introduction. And so what we're going to do with you guys, as you could see, Mandy, of course, my producer, and as well as Kirk, they're on screen. But on the left-hand side, this is taken straight from the Bateau Size YouTube page. This is his recording of the infamous incident that led to this court case. I understand that as Kirk, you mentioned to me that at this time, this was 2015, and you said that at this time Fort Worth didn't even have body worn cameras in use at the time. So this was the only recording, I guess you could say, of the incident itself. And I also understand that you got in a call as a request for a supervisor, so you weren't the officers on scene. But I think watching this and setting the stage can help us lean into what happened in the aftermath and what happened thereafter that led to the opinion. So I'm gonna go ahead and start that. So as I understand it, this is outside the police department itself.
One of our substations, yeah.
One of the substations.
So Fort Worth's a large city. We are broken down into policing divisions, and this was the East Division Patrol headquarters.
Gotcha. I think there's a fair amount of dead air, as is wont. So, all right, here we go.
How's it going, man? You got your ID with you? You got any ID, sir? Sir, do you have any ID? Yes, no, maybe?
Actually, this guy, so we were just implementing, if I may, we were just implementing body cameras at the time. Those guys are wearing, the one on the right in the video, he is wearing a body camera. We didn't.
Oh, I think I see that.
Wholesale yet.
Gotcha.
Investigation. Everything's going on in this world, and especially involving law enforcement. You're walking around law enforcement facility with a video camera. We like to know who's surrounding our complexes. Do you have any ID? Are you refusing to ID yourself, sir?
What's your name and badge number?
Officer Art Reynolds, ID 3825. Are you refusing to ID yourself, sir?
What's your name and badge number?
2586.
Thank you.
Officer Art Reynolds, ID 3825. Are you refusing to ID yourself? Yes, you are.
What's your name and badge number?
I
2586.
didn't say you committed a crime.
Thank you.
Officer Art Reynolds, ID 3825. Are you refusing to ID yourself? Yes, you are.
What's your name and badge number?
Hey, Kirk, on your end, are you able to lower the volume on that?
I can hear. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. I just want to make sure because we can hear it echo coming from you.
Or do you need an echo? Okay, lower the volume on that, would you?
Okay, I turned it down all the way.
Got it.
All right. Thank you.
Further investigation, depending on the outcome of what's going on, you're walking around a law enforcement facility very suspiciously with a video camera. In light of what's going on, we have the right and authority to know who's walking around our facilities.
No, that's incorrect.
Okay, do you have your ID? Are you refusing to ID yourself? Yes or no?
What happens if I don't ID myself?
Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Yes or no?
Okay. But you have to tell me what happens if I don't ID myself.
No, I don't. I'm not required to tell you that. Are you, yes or no? Are you refusing to ID yourself or not?
Once again, what crime have I committed?
I've already explained that to you. I don't need to explain it to you again. Are you or are you not going to identify yourself?
Are you familiar with Texas Penal Code 38.02?
Answer my question. I get to answer the questions here. It's my investigation, not yours.
I'm not going to ID myself.
Okay. All right. Let's go.
Wait, what are you doing?
Let go. Put your hand behind your back. This is what happens when you refuse to ID yourself.
You're kidding, right?
Nope. Just relax. Just relax. All we gotta do is ID you.
Can I get a supervisor out here?
Yep, absolutely. Give us just a minute. West 112, go ahead. Go ahead.
Are you by chance in the parking lot with somebody that's videotaping, officer?
All right. You made the choice, not us.
It's a short video, so it's almost over.
Oh, it's stuck down.
It's a short video, so it's almost
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. If I could just get one more photo, please, sir.
You refuse to identify yourself. I hope you're not accredited by seller. You refuse to identify yourself. I hope you're not accredited by seller. So I was handcuffed, put in the back of a patrol car with the windows up for 5 minutes, sweating my butt off. So I was handcuffed, put in the back of a patrol car. Even though I was put in handcuffs, the officer said that I didn't do anything wrong, and I fully cooperated. Even though I was put in handcuffs, the officer said I didn't do anything wrong, and I fully cooperated. And now he's threatened me with criminal trespass if I ever step foot on the property. And now he's threatened me with criminal trespass.
So I gotta ask, are you one of those individuals there that we see?
I am.
Are you one of those?
I was about 20 pounds ago, but yes, I am.
Gotcha.
It was about 20 pounds ago.
Gotcha.
Look at that. This was
We'll
the risk
address
he was
that.
bending back. That shit hurts like hell.
All right. So the other follow-up videos don't have anything pertaining to the incident itself. It's usually just him giving
Sure.
updates to the actual lawsuit. So so we don't really see it. Did you have a conversation, Mr. Driver, that before he was let go?
So yes, I did. All right. Pardon me. So, as I said before the show started, is a lot of pollen in the air. It's allergy season here. I'm feeling the effects of that, unfortunately. I apologize for the cough to the viewing audience. So, I was inside the building. Those officers, after they detained Mr. Turner, they called for a supervisor. Turns out I was the only supervisor in the building, unfortunately. So I walked out front, spoke with them out in the back of their car. They had Mr. Turner inside the back of the car. He was in handcuffs. And by the way, the windows were open. The windows weren't closed. It was, I don't know, probably high 70s for the low 80s for the temp. But the windows were open. So contrary to what he says. So when I got out there, I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Okay, this guy, he's over here. This guy's got a reporter's vest on, a boonie cap, and jeans, t-shirt, and he's darting from tree to tree like Spy versus Spy stuff, holding his camera at his waist, like halfway under his jacket, like, okay, this is almost a parody of I'm trying to act like I'm covert, but yet way suspicious.
Gotcha.
Someone in the comments said it appeared he was baiting the officers. We'll come back to that. So, so these officers, they were at the office to turn in some stuff. They see this guy filming into the police area where where their officers' personal vehicles are. They're like, okay, we don't know what's up, and given all the heightened security alerts, etc., let's go stop this guy. So they stop him, ask him for ID. As you can hear, he refuses. I don't have to give you ID. They hook him up. He calls for his supervisor. They call me. I come out. So I ask the officers, hey, do you have anything else on him? What do you have on him? Why is he in cuffs? Well, failed ID. I said, okay, that only applies if the person is under arrest. So, and there's a few other circumstances, like
Right.
you witnessed a murder or something like that. You are compelled by law to give your ID. They said, well, that's all we got. And I'm like, you wasn't even walking on the roadway, because there is a city ordinance walking on the roadway sidewalk, provided. But it's like, no. I said, okay, you got to turn him loose. Meanwhile, he's screaming, hey, I need to talk to you. These cuffs are too tight. I walk over to the car, open the door, said, let me see the cuffs. He turns, I look, I was like, okay, hey, the cuffs are ovals. They're not perfect circles. Your wrists are ovals. You got to wear them like this. If you turn like this, the cuffs will bite.
Right.
Those ovals don't go inside of ovals sideways. That's where he got the marks. Okay, so, but I did check the cuffs. There was ample room in there. They were put on appropriately. And I said, okay, hey, you got any ID? And he says, no, I don't have to give you ID. I said, well, you're right. I'll be with you in a moment. Just hang tight. Closed the door, went back to the officers and said, you don't have anything. You got to cut him loose. They go back. They let him out. So he's on the sidewalk, and I explained to him, I said, look, you don't have any business here. Sidewalk is public sidewalk. You are able to walk up and down the sidewalk. You can film to your heart's content. But if you step foot on our property, you don't have business here. I am the representative for this city property. I will arrest you for criminal trespass. And he says, well, what if I need a report? Well, this is a substation. This isn't the place where you get reports. And I told him that. And I said, you need a report? You've got to go to this location to go get your report. He leaves. And I talked to the officers and said, hey, look, guys, said,
Real quick,
Yeah.
Kirk, real quick, just a clarification. At that time, when he was talking about, when you were talking to him about what he can do, where he can go, where he can't go, and as far as, when he was asking questions about what if I need a report, did he have his camera back at that time?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He had it back.
Okay.
I gave him all his stuff. We're all standing out there, and I told him, you're free to leave. However, if you come onto this property, you don't have business here. You've already demonstrated that. I'm gonna have you arrested. So he gave lip about if I need a report, but he was free to leave. He had all his property back. So after he left, I talked to the officers and said, hey, look, failed ID only attaches if you have another offense. If you have an arrest. They said, okay, and we talked for a few minutes. And I said, about 2-3 minutes later, I said, now get in your car, drive around the corner, and see what car he gets into. If he does, get the plate. We can find out, what we need from that. So they drive around the corner and see him getting into an older Volvo with all these anti-government stickers all over it. He's sticking his key in the lock, and he sees them, pulls it away, and starts walking off like, oh, well, we already got the plate and everything. We made a report on that. Gave that to the intel guys. They looked at it and said, yes, this is who this guy is. So they matched it to driver's license, etc. We made a report. So about 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I get served court paper or process, and it is from Mr. Turner's attorney. I don't remember the guy's name, and in that he said, we want an admission of guilt. We want an apology. We want an admission that these officers violated Mr. Turner's First, Fourth, and a few others, Sixth Amendment, a couple others, if I'm not mistaken. Rights, constitutional rights. We want training for the whole department, public apology, and $80,000. Well, I gave that to the city attorneys. They said, yeah, whatever. So probably another 3 weeks goes by, and I got served official, like, you are being sued in federal court.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, the city, and a lot of times, a lot of cities, what they'll do, unfortunately, this, going to court for corporations and municipalities, oftentimes, and I'm reluctant to say this openly, but it's truth, is they look at it as a business decision. It's going to cost us X amount of money to go to court.
Yeah.
This is how much they're asking. If we can give them go away money, oftentimes they will. Whether it's right or wrong or indifferent.
Right.
The city chose to hire an attorney and defend us against this lawsuit. So, you want me to continue?
Well, I just want to throw in I just some points I had in your discussion. The first one that pointed out to me was the statement that your officers made that he was allegedly like darting from tree to tree or pole to pole with they're saying that his hands were gesturing in a certain kind of way. I find that interesting because you don't see that at all from the start of his video. You only got you only got the sense from the start of his video that he was just simply walking, like openly, like just standing still, covering the parking lot, and walking from one end to the other. You didn't really get a sense that of him doing certain things like that would catch the that would more likely catch the attention of an officer.
Mm-hmm.
Because people in the chat were making comparisons to another auditor known as News Now Omaha. I don't know if you're familiar with who he is.
Yeah, I follow that.
Yeah, so so he so News Now Omaha has a significant reputation of doing things and making gestures that it basically the way I see it, like he's trying to commit suicide by cop. The way he acts constantly with his hands in his pockets, refusing to get them out, dressed in all black, his hands behind his back, basically doing everything as that's going to raise many flags with many officers that could eventually get him killed. And there's been several instances that News Now Omaha has been detained at gunpoint because of the way he acts. So what you said that your officers described sounds similar to what most of us in the community recognize News Now Omaha doing. So we don't, but at the same time, we can only rely on that. The second point I wanted to make real quick is, the reason why I asked you for that clarifying question was at the time, and it kind of goes into it. At the time that you and him were having this back and forth, he had already been uncuffed, and he said that he had already gotten his camera back. And so I find it interesting that he did not he didn't record that interaction between himself and yourself.
Yeah. So with that, two things. And the two things are on the first question you had, which will also address the second. Number one, wasn't there for the initial. I didn't observe. So I'm just relying on what the
right. I understand that. Yeah. I want to clarify that. Yes. Right now, we're relying on.
I had not.
Yeah. Sure. We're relying on hearsay information from the officers.
Second of all, those videos are edited. He already had his camera back. He could have put the conversation with me in there after he was released, after he out of the cuffs and everything else, because he had his camera back. those things are selectively edited, and they always are, because, and I'm not suggesting, oh, we're painting it in a light to make police look bad, but oftentimes we are. Okay, so that's the answer to those two questions.
Yeah. So I actually have. Go ahead.
Yeah, but please, I'll be more than happy to tell you the rest of the story. Just tell me when. But go ahead.
I actually have. Well, just some added commentary. I'm now looking at the very case itself and the opinion, and I'm going through some of the facts.
Mhm.
And also, the court does note. The court does note in a footnote that they're basing the facts are derived from the plaintiff's amended complaint, and in this posture, because they're basing this off of a motion to dismiss, they're going to accept the plaintiff's statement of facts as true. So I want to make sure that caveat's known before I make a note that that in this paragraph I have here, that Grinalds, one of the officers, continued to request Turner's identification, which Turner refused to provide. Grinalds and Diaz then, quote, suddenly and without warning, end quote, handcuffed Turner and took his video camera from him. And Grinalds said, quote, this is what happens when you don't ID yourself, end quote. Now, I do agree that is what he said in that last quote. I don't know if they gave it without warning, because I think they asked him several times. But I digress. Oh, my bad. That's my phone. But I also wanted to note to this part. The next paragraph. Turner requested to see a supervisor. Grinalds continued to ask for Turner's ID and told him that he would be fingerprinted so the officers could learn his identity. The officers placed the handcuffed Turner in the back of their patrol car and, quote, left him there to sweat for a while with the windows rolled up, end quote. Turner alleges that no air was getting to the back seat and that he banged on the door so the officers would roll down the windows.
That happened. If that happened before I got there, I don't know. I know that when I got there, the windows were down. And when they called for a supervisor, I was outside within about 2 minutes. I don't know the time frame of what went on before I got there, because I was in my office, which that office at that time had no windows. I was in a little,
right,
basically a broom closet of an office.
Right. Okay. So in that one, okay, please go ahead. I just wanted to note that part that I saw in the facts of the opinion.
Okay. So we got sued.
Yes.
Met with the attorney. Okay. The officers had their own attorney. I had my attorney. Why, I don't know. But myself, the two officers were named. Chief of police was named. The mayor was named. The city of Fort Worth itself was named. Which is common practice. They're just going for big pockets.
Right.
So we never went to court. Made it to the Northern District of Texas, the federal court, and the judge there ruled that qualified immunity for everyone, boom, case dismissed. It bounced up to the Fifth Circuit in New Orleans. And Fifth Circuit looked at it, and in summary, you read the case, but the summary on that is, and I'm Cliff Notes version on this. Lieutenant Driver at the time, Lieutenant Driver, didn't do anything wrong. He followed the script, got out there, assessed the situation as quickly as possible. The only delay that Lieutenant Driver had was of Mr. Turner's own doing, of shouting for him, hey, my cuffs are too tight. I went over and checked, etc. And then when I came back, I told the officers, you gotta release this guy. The Fifth Circuit then said, so qualified immunity attaches for Lieutenant Driver.
Mm-hmm.
However, the officers, and at this late date, I couldn't tell you what part, but they said, okay, for the officers, the two officers that initially detained and put Mr. Turner in cuffs, yes, qualified immunity attaches for this portion. And again, at this late date, I couldn't tell you the specifics of what that is. But for this portion, no qualified immunity does not attach. So we're going to look at that. So the appeals court looked at that and said, all right, these courts say it's legal to film the police.
Mm-hmm.
These courts say it's not.
Mm-hmm.
That being the case, how are the officers supposed to know whether it's legal or not? If the courts can't decide,
Right.
how are the officers supposed to decide?
Right. So just to
So if that's the case, we're going to make case law right here and now in this appeals court. And we're going to say, here and now, judgment for the plaintiff, yes, you can film the police, provided that you're not interfering with their duties. Judging for the plaintiff, we are giving no damages, though, so they didn't get any money. But on a go-forward basis from here forward, at least in the area covered under the Fifth Circuit, if the police detain you unlawfully for filming them, you can file suit and get damages.
correct. So effectively what he's what Captain Driver said is when it comes to aspects of qualified immunity, there has to be what the court says a clearly established right. And what that means is that it's a right is established such that every police officer should know that the individual is permitted to do this or not permitted to do X,
Right.
or permitted or not permitted to do X based off of First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment principles, etc. And what the court was saying is that at the time of the incident, there was no clearly established right under the auspices of the Fifth Circuit that established a First Amendment right to film the police in public.
Correct.
So therefore, the court ultimately held that the officers would have their qualified immunity, but what they've also said is that going forward, based on our look at both the cases within the Fifth Circuit and outside the Fifth Circuit, because they looked at other circuit cases as well.
Sure. Yeah.
We are now going forward. There is, in fact, a First Amendment right to record the police in public, subject to time, place, and manner restrictions, which is basically the standard that's applied to with all most other circuits.
As established by that particular case of Turner versus Driver.
Correct. So
Common
Turner,
law.
yes, it is from going on. Yeah, this is the actual common law, not sovereign citizen common law. The actual common law that this is established precedent, and therefore cops can no longer, the police can no longer say, well, I didn't know that you didn't have a right to film the police. The court's going to say, you do have it. It's there. You, based on this case, Turner versus Driver, you're on notice from here on out. And so that's what the case stated going forward. And that's what makes this case so important, and also why you hear a lot of First Amendment auditors who are in the Fifth Circuit. So Texas, Oklahoma, I forget what other states are in the Fifth Circuit. But Texas, I know Texas, Oklahoma, and
Louisiana. I think
Louisiana.
Arkansas.
Louisiana, Arkansas. That's right. In those, if you hear First Amendment auditor doing something, saying something, and then they're talking to the police, they'll scream out Turner versus Driver as an attempted
I
shield.
got a story on that.
So, real quick, yeah. So whether or not it's applicable, whether or not it's applicable to the facts at hand, because again, the First Amendment auditors only hear the first half of that sentence. You know, you have a First Amendment right to film the police in public, subject to time, place, and manner restrictions. They kind of forget the second half of that sentence. So they kind of want it. They think it's an ultimate verbal shield for them to do whatever they would like. But I would definitely love to hear your story here in regards to that.
All right. So fast forward, this case it goes to appeals, and I didn't even hear about it. So I got another case another story real briefly. So I'm minding my business. Someone reaches out to me on Facebook Messenger like 2 years after this goes down. Some guy out of Michigan, and he's like, I hope you enjoyed those days off. Is this driver from Turner versus Driver? I hope you enjoyed the days off you got. You're a disgrace to everyone, blah, blah, blah. And it showed, and good that, you're a horrible person. You're a horrible, and I'm like, whoa, what the heck? So I sent this guy, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I actually was vindicated by the courts on this and qualified immunity. I'm good. And by the way, rather than looking at the bad stuff, let's look at the good stuff I've done. So here's a link to the work I'm doing in the community here per this and blah, blah, blah. And the guy's like, oh, okay, maybe you're good, but the officers are bad. And I'm like, here's what happened here. And, it's like, here's what the court said on this. And there wasn't a definitive answer to this. And the courts made that. So, and he never contacted me again. But nonetheless, that's a funny little sideline. But an even better one is, so fast forward 3 years from this, I made captain, I promoted, and I end up I'm on midnights as a duty captain, crappy days off, crappy hours, like 8 at night to 6 in the morning, with like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday off, so I'm working the overnight on the busy nights of the week. So I end up in the entertainment district, and this guy, I'm not going to say his name just because I don't want to give him the shout out on YouTube and make him even more famous. But nonetheless, he's a local First Amendment auditor, social media influencer, or thinks he is. So anyway, and I don't mean that insultingly, but
real quick, is he one of the two auditors we've mentioned before by name before the live stream?
No, he's
okay.
not.
Okay.
No, he's not. So anyway, so this guy, he's going into his MO is he goes into the bars that are where there's officers working off duty, and he goes to the patrons and he sticks his camera in their face, and when they slap his hand away, he goes up to the police officer and says, I want to file an assault. So this goes on. Manager tells the officer, hey, kick this guy out. So he gets escorted out. Well, I happen to be driving down the street, and I'm in a black and white Tahoe that says captain on the side of it. So he flags me down. And all right, so I get out, and you need to talk, and he sticks his camera in my face. Hey, blah, blah. I was like, hey man, look, you can't put your camera in my face. You're in my personal space. This is not safe for me, not safe for you or anyone else. And he says to me, I know my rights. Have you ever heard of Turner versus Driver? I look down at my name tag right here. It says Driver. And I says, yeah, I might know a thing or two about that. So, but nonetheless, that was pretty funny to me that this guy quoted my case to me on the streets, telling me that he can film me.
Nice. That's did you mention it to him, and did he have a reaction to it, or was he just too far gone to even notice?
He didn't. I don't think it even registered with him. It didn't register with him. His partner, incidentally, was like, and this is blankety BS, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what? And I turned to the manager. I was like, were you offended by that language? And he's like, what? Yes, I was. So I snatched him and I pulled him to the side and I said, Bubba, I could take you to jail right now, or y'all can just leave. What do you want to do? And he's like, well, I don't want to leave. I think I'll just go to, I want to leave. I don't think I want to go to jail tonight. So, well, you need to convince this other guy. And then they left the scene. But nonetheless, that was the end of that. But him quoting Turner versus Driver to me was pretty funny. And now our department, I actually about 6 months ago, it takes a long time. We're, government agency, all the legality and all that other stuff. It takes a while for things to catch up. We are actually doing training on all these First Amendment auditors, and we're quoting that case in the Fifth Circuit of Turner versus Driver. So
Well, I'm not surprised at all for that it would be cited. My to kind of counteract, I wish he was here. My brother, but he actually called me earlier this afternoon. But he's currently on shift right now. But the last time when I had him on
okay,
stream, he told me in his department, he's also in the DFW area. He told me in his department they had a smattering of First Amendment auditors. Not just like one or two, but kind of a decent handful of them who were in his area. And he told me that, and you guys can go, fact check me and fact check my recounting of what he said in our previous live stream. That what they did was at first they didn't really know how to respond because they didn't know what was at that time what was and was not permitted. And what happens is oftentimes in whenever they would hook them up for something or another, that he would the prosecuting attorneys or the county prosecutors would just no pros, or they would just dismiss the matter saying there's not enough evidence to go forward. And so the cops, my brother and his officers were kind of getting frustrated. So I think ultimately he's like, okay, we need to bring these county prosecutors, these county prosecutors, to come out and see what we're seeing, because because he said it's hard to put into paper what they're doing that's sufficient for a county prosecutor to be able to kind of see what they're. So eventually he did that. Apparently he did that. A group of them were brought in, and then it was only then when they saw what these auditors were doing, like, they were like, oh hell no! All right, you can hook it up. You can hook them up for this, and this, and then
absolutely.
and then
And that's our training.
and so
That's a lot of our training.
yeah, and so ultimately what happened is I guess the judges kind of got wind of it too. And the judge is like, didn't pull any punches, because after one or two of these auditors, okay, you're getting 30 days. You're getting 30 days. After a handful of them were getting 30 days in jail, a lot of them ultimately ended up backing off, or at least they kind of kept their distance a lot more going forward. And I think
It even goes further than that. So, if I may, so our training is conducted by our police training academy and also by our city attorney. And they've worked in conjunction with the district attorney's office in our county. And as you said, we've brought them out and said, here's what we're dealing with. Not me personally, but the officers who are involved in that stuff. Here's what we're dealing with. And our city attorney and the prosecutors have pretty much said, oh my gosh, you guys are letting them get away with a lot more than you really have to.
right.
So here's the bottom line for the training. They can film you, not a problem. However, they can't get into your space. You have this zone of protection around you. And we've had it where officers stop a car on a traffic stop, go up to the window, and someone will walk right up next to the officer and start filming. We tell them now, our training is, we tell them, you need to step back, behind that telephone pole or into the grass area or across the street or whatever. We give them a reasonable amount of time to do so. And if they refuse or they don't, we arrest them for interfering with our duties. And the district attorney's office is taking that case all day long.
Yeah. So on the, it's good that you mentioned that, because, and as Desert Sentinel mentioned it too, a lot of these other auditors, and I notice like a lot of auditors will cite Turner versus Driver outside of the Fifth Circuit, but in turn they'll also cite Glick v Cuniff. I think I got the last name right. That's a Second Circuit. No, it's either a Second or Third Circuit case that also established the right
with those, but yeah,
that also established the right to film. But the problem is they often cite that Glick case specifically to say to officers, "Oh, I only need to be 10 feet away. Like 10 feet away. I could be as close as 10 feet away." No. But
Yeah.
This is the difference between how a layman interprets a law and how somebody who, I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, or how an attorney will read
Sure.
the text of a case. The court in that case did not. The court talked about how one of the reasons why the plaintiff was fine in what he was, they mentioned as a descriptor, he was 10 feet away and which was a sufficient distance to allow the officers to do what they needed to do. He was not being combative, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These guys took the phrase 10 feet to say, aha,
Yep.
the court established a bright line rule, 10 feet.
No.
And I'm like, no, that's not what the court said. The court only gave that there was a sufficient distance between the observer and the officers, such that they did not that person was not interfering. It did not establish a bright line measured rule that
So let's
every
clarify
department
on that, Marty.
has to follow. Yeah.
In clarifying that, in our training, and this is just for my department, keep in mind, this is not nationwide, this isn't statewide region, this is my department. And ideally, other departments will and are adopting these similar policies. They've specifically told us, don't make it a specific amount of feet. Because we ain't carrying tape measures out there.
Oh, that's another
Tell
one
this
they like to
person,
do.
I need you to stand on the other side of that telephone pole. I need you to get out of the street and stand on the sidewalk. Don't come any closer than the sidewalk over there. I need you to stand on the other side of that car. Whatever distance we need for that cone of safety, if you will, that's the distance that we establish. They specifically told us, don't put specific, distances, 10 feet, 12 feet, whatever, because that can be challenged a lot easier. What if he was 10 feet and we thought he was 8? So we don't even do that. Get on the other side of that car, please, sir. You can film all day.
Right. Right. So I appreciate you mentioning that. What you said, the whole zone that that officers are allowed to create, which I think is fine. I think it's also fine because, and oftentimes I try to tell people, both the auditors who you get on my case for being a bootlicker, as well as people in my own audience. I actually have no issues with recording the police. I actually think it's a valid thing for people to do. I think it's and as a matter of fact, it should be encouraged. I'm fully in support of being able to have third party video access to incidences, because you know what, sometimes you may not be able to trust that the body camera footage is going to be able to convey everything that you might be able to see. I'm absolutely all for that, and I keep trying to tell people that. And I'm not going to side with the police automatically just because I don't like the auditor in question. Just because I think the auditor is an asshole doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to support whenever if their rights are in fact violated. But with that being said, yeah, it's kind of hard. They do their best job at making me test my principles. You know what I mean? Especially when it's particular auditors who do their best to get officers to take the bait, whether it's like verbally accosting them, and the antics that they're doing, the actions that they do to try and escalate a situation.
I'm going to refer you back to Turner versus Driver. At the time of our lawsuit, the attorney representing him had 6 cases in federal court against 6 different municipalities for almost identical issues. That was this guy's job. His whole job was to, and the reality is, there was an agency that put him in jail for jaywalking. Dude's filming. He was in the crosswalk. He wasn't jaywalking. That agency settled. His whole goal, his whole paycheck is dependent on cities paying out rather than going to court. My agency, luckily, decided, no, the officers didn't do anything, or I didn't do anything wrong. So we're going to go to court on this thing. And we now have case law that we can use to create training for our department to actually inform our officers and make them better able to do their job while protecting the constitutional rights of the citizens and non-citizens for that matter.
Right. So moving a little bit on. What I also wanted to ask is, and you had mentioned it before, that you are, at least I mean, obviously it's in her freaking name. Your department's well acquainted with Carolina and Fort Worth.
Yeah, so let's talk about her. Not her specifically. I don't know about her, but we talked about not just the prosecution, but here's the next step, and I'm hoping other agencies are going to this. These ones that are frequent flyers that they're pushing and they get arrested, and then they hit their fan base, their subscriber base for, hey, bail me out of jail, give me funds for my defense, etc.
Right.
I don't know if my agency's doing it, but I'd heard, and maybe Artie, you can research on this, but I heard recently of a local agency contacting YouTube and saying, hey, this person's gone to jail on this like 5 or 6 times already. We're pushing into felony level offenses, and you are propagating this by allowing them to push this out. And they got not deplatformed, but demonetized.
Really?
As a result.
Yes. You know what? Okay, so now that explains it.
Hey, you guys are allowing these people to make money off of breaking the law. YouTube demonetized, and there's someone, and I don't know if it's my agency or one of the bedroom communities around us, but someone recently got demonetized. I don't think it's because of Carolina Fort Worth, but it's someone similar, one of the prominent influencer or whatever the first locally got demonetized or recently, not deplatformed, but demonetized.
You know, that makes sense because I think it was last September. I think it was around last September, or it was not too long ago last year that Carolina and Fort Worth. I remember I am subscribed to her, and I remember she posted a video or a live stream where she all of a sudden said she got demonetized. I'm wondering whether or not
I don't follow that, so that's on you.
Right, gotcha. I gotcha, but I do recall Carolina and Fort Worth getting very upset that she got demonetized. And I think other more prominent auditors have also done that too. Have also experienced that as well. So that's interesting to hear. I know also people have been. I think a lot of people in my community have been letting people know or have been contacting individuals like city workers or state workers who that, hey, YouTube also now has a privacy complaint system. Not because of the US, but because of Europe. YouTube now allows you to say this person's I don't want this person. I didn't give this person permission to put my likeness up onto YouTube, and they can have YouTube take down the video until the person cuts that individual out from the video. So there are now a lot more tools in place that allow people to kind of push back a little bit, because the way I see
this is evolving. I mean, when this idea of First Amendment auditors, it's a new and novel thing. People get famous over it, and as it evolves, all the rules start coming into place because all the people are like, wait a minute, I didn't agree to that.
Right. Because again, I hate having to constantly do the caveats, but I'll do it. But you already heard them. My issue oftentimes is that with a lot of these, especially the bigger channels, the ones with 100, 50, 75, 100,000 plus subscribers, the reason that a lot of them get these high subscriber amounts isn't simply because they're keeping a reasonable distance and recording the incident. They're pushing the envelope. They're being verbally abusive. They're being they're trying to push the boundaries as much as they can to try and hopefully get the cops to take the bait, or a lot of times they don't even record, they don't even film the police. They go to a freaking zoning office, or they'll go to private businesses. I don't know about you, but I don't know how recording a private business somehow protects my First Amendment rights. And eventually,
this is Texas. I don't know that I'd want to do that too
Well-
often here.
well, the problem that a few of them are experiencing is that eventually, I keep on telling a lot. They don't want to listen because again, they think I'm a bootlegger. But eventually, I tell these guys, and you've seen it, that eventually you're going to find somebody who's going to take that assault charge. They're going to find somebody who's going to have.
Exactly. You will find someone that will be more than happy to grant you your wish of becoming a YouTube assault victim.
Yeah, and if you know what, if you're willing to take the licks, I mean, go for it. But I keep telling them, like, yeah, you know what, you can get after them afterwards. Yeah, they're probably going to be arrested for assault, but it's your face is going to be planted on the ground for half an hour, and it's going to be your $3,000 camera that they just busted. You want to do that, go for it.
You
But
gotta wonder what's going to happen when one of these guys meets someone else who has his own YouTube channel of, hey, watch me assault this guy, and that's going to be entertainment. One of these auditors goes into a private business, and the other guy happens to be someone who, hey, I'm going to film too, and watch me beat this guy up who's in my face.
right. I mean, like I said,
that isn't a police issue until it becomes one.
right,
That
of
isn't
course.
part of Turner versus Driver, so we're sidebarring it.
Right. We're sidebarring into the generalized content, the generalized aspect of auditors and the auditing community. And Redacted, yes, exactly. Like the Redacted mentions a video of that I showcased of an auditor in LA who was recording an officer who I think at the time he said he was on his lunch break, and he was observing folks who were playing a chess game, like out. It was on a public street, so he had the right to record the officer. Right. But the problem is he kept on baiting the officer, and two, he was being loud and obnoxious that he was disrupting the chess game, up to the point where the members of the local community
getting mad. Yeah,
members of that community were about ready to mess him up, and it was literally the cop who was the only thing standing in the way between this guy getting socked in the mouth, because he would not shut up. And it was interesting to me because it seemed like I don't want to make stereotypes, but it seemed like a lot of those citizens probably have had their fair share of run-ins with law enforcement before, and it was funny for me to see them, side with the officer against this auditor. I think it was a perfect encapsulation of, what these auditors think that cops are, which are nothing more than tyrannical, jackbooted,
blah, 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 yeah.
road pirates, even, and an officer who
that's a traffic division.
Yeah, and versus an officer who clearly has won, who's earned the trust and respect of the community that he's serving. But I actually want to go into that a little bit more. I know we're kind of moving on from Turner, but I think we did get a good sense of the case itself, sure, and the circumstance of it. I do want to pivot. Yeah, I do want to pivot a little bit and ask you now: have you actually dealt with sovereign citizens before?
I have, and there's several different flavors.
Oh yes, I couldn't agree more. I talk about.
I mean, you got the ones that I'm a sovereign citizen, blah blah blah, unless you're a sheriff, and then I forget what. There's a country in Africa.
Moors.
A group.
The Moors. The Moors.
No. What's the country though?
They Morocco. They think it's Morocco.
No, not Morocco. It's a different. I forget what it is, but there's a different one, and they. okay, fine.
There is?
We deal with
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's like I'm a citizen of, I wish I knew the country. It's not Morocco, but they claim, and it's some Central African. It's not Nigeria. I forget the name of it, but and I don't have a map in front of me, but it's like, I'm a citizen of XYZ. And this is like some redneck white dude, typically in an old beat up pickup truck. I'm a citizen of such and such. I don't got to show you nothing. It's like, are you kidding me? Okay. Now I haven't dealt with them in several years because I'm a captain now. If I write a ticket, it's because I'm on my bike and someone almost killed me by,
Right.
moving into my lane and I happened to be there. But seriously, I used to deal with these guys all the time, and it's like, okay, well, you got to show me your ID. You're driving a vehicle, you got to show me some ID, or we'll just go ahead and tow your ride and take you to jail. And that's just how it is. But
Now,
I didn't deal with a whole lot of these folks. Most of those guys live in rural communities, thankfully. I spent most of my time as a uniformed patrol officer working the inner city, and I dealt with different issues.
gotcha. Like I would say, like in my experience, I live in not near. Well, I live about 30 minutes from Philadelphia, and in Philadelphia proper, there is a heavy contingent of Moorish sovereign citizens. And so
Yep.
they are pretty prominent in the Philadelphia area. But
Sure.
I'm not surprised that you probably deal with it in the rural area in Texas. More so because my brother says, like, he's experienced them before, but for him, he says they're kind of once in a blue moon. It's not like he deals with a sovereign citizen like once a month or anything like that, but it's definitely like an occurrence.
Yeah,
So I
we
was
dealt
kind of
with them
curious.
every now and then you'll run into them. When I was a patrol officer, and again, this is 20 years ago plus. When I was a patrol officer, the sovereign citizen movement was about probably the last 5 years of when I was a patrol officer. So I know you deal with it more now, but I was running into him probably once every 6 months or so. And it's like, okay, this guy, yeah. And when you explain to him that you understand you're going to go to jail and I'm going to tow your car, it costs money to get out, several $100s. Mysteriously, they produced an ID then, and okay, here you go. Here's who I am.
Yeah.
Um, and understandably, but keep in mind, now my days as a patrol officer, that was a different era. I've been on 31 years. 20 years ago, and things have changed, they've evolved. And I'm not saying the things we did are bad or were bad. I worked in a very, very violent community. There was a program back in the 90s called Weed and Seed. It was a federal program. And I worked in that community where there was, put it this way, New York City was number one in violent crime per capita. Fort Worth was number two. The city
Oh, wow.
of Dallas the city of Dallas, which is our neighbor 30 miles to the east, was number three in violent crime per capita. And I remember the news reporter talking to the chief of the Dallas Police Department saying, well, how do you feel about being number three in the nation for violent crimes per capita? And I swear, this is the year that I came on the police department. He said, well, at least we're not Fort Worth. Yeah. It's just craziness. So the stuff we did at the time, by today's standards, you would think, oh my gosh, this is just barbaric. But when I came on in the 90s, the stuff they did 20 and 30 years earlier then, it's like, oh my gosh, this is barbaric.
Well,
I'm sure
that's
when
true.
they came on, the stuff they did 30 years earlier was the same. So we, law enforcement, our nation in general, our communities, our society, is in a constant state of evolution. We are refining, we're getting better. We always strive to do that as an agency, as a community. We always strive to do better, and we do tend to do better by and large.
Right. No,
People ask me, go ahead.
I was gonna. Well, yeah, I was gonna say you mentioned that you came on into the '90s, and yeah, I mean, I was a youngin ish during the '90s, but my dad would tell me, he was from New York, and he would just tell me like, in the '80s and the early '90s, like New York was a freaking war zone. The way he would
It's out of
describe it.
control.
So it was '90s were the early '90s were a pretty wild time when it came to violent crime in major cities for sure.
It was, and I will tell you, over 3 years, that weed and seed unit knocked violent crime down in the city of Fort Worth by 75%.
Wow.
Yeah. Uh, it- and it sucked at that time to be a drug dealer who carried a gun because we were coming after you. Um, it was rough and tumble back in those days, and I'm not condoning
Right.
everything, in today's environment. I'm not condoning what happened back then. But at the same time, public perception also changes. I was actually in line I was in uniform. I was on my lunch break. I'm at Costco and I'm in line, and someone says, "Hey, thank you for your service." I said, "I appreciate it." And they said, "Man, I wouldn't want your job right now." And I was like, "Really?" They said, "Yeah." And I said, "I'm having the time of my life." They said, "What?" I said, "Let me explain something to you. My dad joined the California Highway Patrol in 1968. He'd just come back from the Vietnam War as a Marine. If you looked at 1968, law enforcement wasn't held in a positive light in the media. People were spitting on soldiers coming back from Vietnam. You were seeing all these stories of dogs and the fire hoses and
Yeah.
everything. Law enforcement wasn't in a public light. I joined 24 years later. When I joined, law enforcement, man, Bill Clinton passed this omnibus crime stimulus package for law enforcement, $1 billion into funding those programs like Weed and Seed, which became a part of, to target crime. And I mean, police officers were riding high in the public. Well, 24 years later, no, it's actually 28, 29 years later that things started going downhill in the public side for us. Why the reprieve? 9/11 gave us about a five years of extra positive press. But the reality is law enforcement does this in the public eye.
Mm-hmm.
We're
Oh yeah.
high for about, and it's a 25-year cycle. We ride high, and we ride low, and then we change a few things. We work towards growing and becoming better at what we do: body cameras, tasers, less lethal force options, more mental health services, etc. And then we start going up. Okay, that's just a cycle that we've been on for at least 100+ years.
I mean, that sounds.
Look at the
Yeah.
history of policing. That's the way it is.
No, I don't. I
So
don't. I
when
don't
we
deny it
look,
at all.
when we when we look at oh my gosh, cops are getting a bad rap. Just wait, it'll change. By the time this next generation starts hitting their peak years, we're going to be in a positive light again. Because the public gets, okay, they get sick of, these cops are doing bad things. And so we sanction the police officers and pull the reins hard on them.
Yep.
And then the criminals start getting loose and doing their thing. And then the public gets tired of getting robbed and raped and murdered and everything. Oh, well, cops, turn them loose. And so that's what we do.
Yeah. No, you're right. No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it ultimately
And that's
becomes
how
like
our
a
nation
cycle.
works, and that's how
Right.
we grow as a nation and as a society. Because every time this happens, every cycle, we get better. We get
Right.
better as police officers. We get better as societies and as communities in how to handle our issues.
No, and I mean, it could always get better. That's the thing. Nothing's always going to nothing's ever going to be perfect, but you can always do better. You can always have better
People aren't
programs in
perfect, so it
place.
can't be.
Right. Well, yeah, and ultimately, our institutions are run by human beings who are ultimately infallible. At the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And I agree with you there that
Absolutely.
and I agree with you that in a sense, like you have in the '90s was freaking wild. They passed a bunch of those crime bill. They passed the crime bills. They do the major crackdown, and they get the crime, the crime down, and then people are like, okay, now you're going too far here. We're having some issues here. There's a lot of people that we think that you're overstepping your bounds. So they, like you said, they pull the reins in. And then we'll see. I think in 2021, the latest statistics came out that there's been a not so insignificant uptick in violent crime. And then after, because of the 2020 and what happened there, you're now going to see, like, okay, now we want let's bring it back. We were JK on the defund the police thing, JK. And so they bring it back in, and then eventually they're going to be like, okay, now you're going too far again. It's going to eventually be that kind of a cycle where, we're too far, too much, and ultimately, eventually, it may not ever happen, but we'll hopefully have that where we have that equilibrium in place, where we do feel that the crime is sufficiently contained without feeling like people's individual liberties are being threatened.
Rights aren't getting trampled. Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's always got to be that public perception. If it ever happens, I don't know. Well, you honestly, I agree with you. We're probably going to forever be.
It does happen, and I'll tell you why. Because and I know we're stepping way out of Turner versus Drake.
No. Well, I mean, no. I love this conversation because I kind of wanted to be able to have this conversation.
Theory on all of this, and it's just my personal opinion. This is, let me put the disclaimer out there.
Right, of course.
This is not the opinion of the Fort Worth Police Department or any executive rank or any of that stuff. This is my personal opinion. Okay, when you have bad things happen on the streets, robberies or, carjackings, all the, shootings and everything else. What does Joe Citizen do? Well, he calls police. Okay. Well, if that doesn't fix it, then he gripes to the police chief. He complains there. If that doesn't fix it, he or she contacts their council member. And what does the council member do? Tells the police chief, what are you doing about the crime issue in your community? Well, we'll send more cops. Okay? Well, cops are, here's a dirty little secret. It's not really a secret, but when cops aren't taking that call, when you call 911, they show up, they take your report, okay, fine. When they're not doing that, we don't want them sitting in parking lots pulled up together. We want them out here doing preventative patrol. So what do they do? They stop cars. They stop, talk to people. And they write tickets, or they find reasons, legitimate reasons, like, oh, we stop a car and the guy's got dope or a gun, whatever, we put him in jail. Okay? If the average officer is putting, writing 2 or 3 tickets a day and putting a person in jail every other day, if you have one cop in I call it a 5 square mile area, then one person is going to jail that day or every other day, and 2 or 3 people are getting tickets every day. Now, in the poor communities, write them insurance tickets for no insurance, no license, for running the stop sign or whatever. They can't pay the ticket. So then 2-3 weeks later, well, that's a warrant. When we stop them, they go to jail and their car gets towed, and you see how this propagates.
Right.
But if we've got a violent crime issue in a part of the city, and the solution, if that is the solution, or it's the solution we know, is to send more cops, well, if every cop, when they're not taking a report, is out here doing 2 or 3 tickets a day, putting a person in jail every day or 2, well, guess what? Instead of 1 cop every 5 miles, if we have 5 cops for every 1 mile, well, guess what? That community, they're getting overserved on number of people going to jail and number of people getting tickets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that's not the answer, but I'm saying perhaps we need to look as a society at what are the underlying issues driving the violence, and maybe putting more cops in there per capita is not always the solution. Does that make sense?
No, I agree with you that, and I think there's, especially now in our current times in 2023, a lot of these things can be heavily data driven, and I think applying more data driven and um,
We've been doing data-driven policing for about 12, 15 years now.
right. No, and what I'm saying is like that with 12, 15 years, you now have a fairly good body to work with as to seeing what does in fact work. Whether it is whether it, I don't want I militarization of the police. I don't want to say boots on the ground, but boots on the ground in
No,
the
I
sense
get
of
it.
having
We
more.
were militarized when
No,
I was doing this.
what I'm saying is like the people in the chat like, oh god, militarization of police, and I'm using a military term. But I mean more cops per capita in an area, whether or not does that in fact address the underlying issue of violent crime, or does it mask the underlying issue to where if once the influx is reduced because ultimately a budget cannot completely sustain a heavy influence of policing in a singular area, that it's just going to come right back into it. But it's ultimately going to come right back to it, and we're back to the same problem. That's what I'm trying to mean. Is like with the amount of data that we have over the last 10 to 15 years, we're able to look at and see what kind of solutions that we can glean from this data that we've collected over the past decade.
All right, so Deacon Fatal had a question on here.
Yes.
To me, does community policing and education help? Yeah, it helps if you explain to the community what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish. Absolutely. And I will tell you, in the city of Fort Worth, we've been practicing community policing very heavily since, like, truly 3-4 months before I became a police officer. Our chief at that time embraced community policing. We have never strayed away from it. And I'll give you a short story on this that's an example. We had an officer. We just got tasers, and tasers are, at the time, like them, hate them, whatever. They save lives. It keeps us from having to shoot people. So a female officer, gets a call of this guy's going nuts. He's got mental health issues. He's self-medicating with street drugs, namely crack cocaine. He's high. He's beat up his mom. He's beat up his sister. He's in the front yard. And the officer gets there. He's refusing to respond to commands because he's in this agitated state. He's high on crack. He charges the officer. She tases him. Now, the tasers we had at the time, you pull the trigger, and as long as you got that trigger held down, that person's going for a ride. If
Right.
you pull and release, it's a 5-second ride.
Right.
Pull and hold, they keep going. So she shoots this guy with the taser, and it does its job. It locks him up. He falls to the ground. Well, mom freaks out that this female officer, just tased her kid. Disregard that he just beat up mom. So she jumps on the officer's back and starts punching on the officer. Well, when you are in a fight situation, your hands minor motor skills go away and you do major only, and she clenched her fists. Well, this one's holding a taser. And while she's busy fighting, that dude took a 47 or 49-second taser ride.
Oh.
Yeah, his heart couldn't take that. He died. It was, and I'm not a doctor or don't profess to be one, but when you're high on crack or meth or something, some sort of amphetamine type of product, if you're going, and you get locked down for whatever reason, your heart tends to not like that and oftentimes explodes. That's what happened to this guy. He died. A few months later, or not even a few months, a few weeks later, and we made some changes in our department for that. Actually, we contacted Taser and said, if they pull and hold the trigger, it's still going to be 5 seconds for our agency. It's not going to be a continuous cycle. So we changed that. But that community, and it was an African-American community, that community protested at city council about 2 weeks later. And when they did, I told you Dallas is 30 miles to our east. bunch of African American folks from Dallas came over to Fort Worth. Now, this is in the late 90s. They came to Fort Worth and they said, they showed up. And this African American community who was protesting at council said to these guys, "Who are you?" They said, "We're from Dallas. We're here to help you. We're here to back you. We're protesting with you." Our community said, "This is a Fort Worth matter. You're not welcome. Please go home." It didn't matter that they were African American trying to help an African American community. Fact is, this is a Fort Worth matter. You're not welcome here. That is a testament to the relationship that the police department has developed with that African American community in Fort Worth. That, hey, this is a family thing. You're not part of the family. Go away.
Wow.
So yeah. And so we've been practicing community policing. Community policing absolutely works. But the reality, when you talk about violent crime, this is a very, very complex issue. Why do we have violent crime? I mean, and everyone wants to give a simplistic answer.
Oh yeah, of course.
The reality is there's a thing called ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. Have you heard of this?
ACEs and first childhood experience? No.
ACES, Adverse Childhood Experiences. So 6 or more things like watching dad get arrested for beating the crud out of mom. Seeing the drug dealer shot on the street in a drive-by shooting. Those type of incidents, inner city type problems. When a child in his or her formative years sees those things, 6 or better rewires your brain.
Wow.
It actually rewires the synapses in your brain, making it your flight or fight mechanisms go into overdrive a heck of a lot quicker. Making it to where you're more primal, if you will, when you are under stress.
Yeah.
Okay? If we're going to address the issues, let's start talking about what are the kids seeing and how can we address. I mean, obviously, ideally, in a utopia, which we will never have because people are people.
Yeah.
And we will always have an underclass of people, if you will. But start addressing what are the kids seeing and how can we somehow reverse this changes that have gone on in the brain structure to push them into a consistent flight or fight mode.
Right.
When we looked, we actually did a study in Fort Worth. This was that project that I was on. I called it the Leveraging Project, where we went into the inner city community, and the top 3 things that people had issues. The biggest issues was I don't have not enough food, I don't have a job, living wage job, and I don't have transportation to the food or the job. When we start addressing those type of issues, and I'll tell you the biggest issue we have in our inner city is the issue of hope. The folks in the inner city don't have hope that we can better ourselves and move into middle class. What is middle class? Helping people get their credit right, get the living wage jobs, get their credit right, learning what actually is a savings account and a checking account, how to manage money, and moving into home ownership. If we can start addressing those jobs and home ownership, jobs first and foremost will change a lot of things. But if we can start moving people more into that and give them hope and have mentors along the lines helping people move into that, that's where we will find our solutions to the violent crime.
I mean, I basically agree with
soapbox, but
Kirk
driver opinion.
I hear you, man. I effectively kind of agree with a lot of what you're saying, if not everything that you're saying. I think a lot of issues does come out to having a mental the mental state that if you feel that you are stuck in the circumstance that you are, if you feel that there's literally no chance that you can bring yourself out, then why even bother trying? Why even bother thinking
It's
of
crabs in a bucket.
why even bother
I was in
thinking of
Thailand a
alternative
few years
solutions?
ago.
Yeah.
You heard about crabs in a bucket, Artie?
Crabs in a bucket? No.
So I went to Thailand. Actually, the Rotary Club sent me to Thailand for 3 months. The department gave me business days back in 2018 uh, to go to Thailand, to Bangkok, to the Rotary Peace Fellowship. I am a Rotary Peace Fellow now. So I actually blogged about it. It was pretty cool. But one of the instructors talks about crabs in a bucket. You know, if you just put one crab in a bucket, he'll climb his way out. You see a whole bunch of crabs in a bucket, none of them escapes. Because as soon as one reaches that rim, the others pull them back in.
Hmm.
And it's the same in our inner city communities, where, oh, you want to better yourself? You want to go to college? You think you're better than us? That's not what we do. Oh, you want to get that job? You want to be part of this class of people, not us. Why you think you're better than us?
Mm.
And that pulls people down so much more than anything else.
Yeah, but I think that also the cultural pressure, societal pressure does help to hinder progress in that respect too. I think there's definitely something to that. What real quick, I hate to derail briefly, but I want to get to the super chats real quick. Not a brat. Thank you for being for being a member. Artie, you rock. Thank you for having Captain Driver on tonight. Gia 999. Thank Google hates me and won't allow me to get memberships. I've tried to fix it, so I just super chat. Thanks for the great content as usual, Artie. Thank you very much, Gia. Deacon, thank you for the 5 gifted memberships, and then Deacon, thank you for the Deacon, thank you for the $20 that Driver had mentioned earlier, but thank you for the $10 that you sent to us earlier. Captain Driver, it's very nice to meet you, and you think this is a way to grift money from their subscribers instead of just going to work? I think she's referring to First Amendment auditors in general. I would say personally, I think for the vast majority of these auditors, especially the big wigs, this isn't a just cause. This, to me personally, is a grift that they are doing this. They're in it for the views and the money more so than a principled stance on transparency. But that's just me. So, yeah, we were talking about that. Yeah, community policing. She said, "Thank you for the $20, of course." Um, I mean, I was telling chat they mentioned the whole issue of defund the police. The problem is that I understand what a lot of people are saying. Like, well, defund the police means like reallocating resources. Well, the problem that I have, and the problem that I think a lot of other people have, who who uh who didn't see it that way. A lot of us heard the loudest voices that were talking about defund the police, and a lot of those loudest voices were talking about it literally. They weren't talking about reform policing as in reallocating resources towards better mental health training, or increased community policing, or increased use of force training. Most of the loudest voices talking about defund the police, they were literally talking about slashing police budgets wholesale. And that's the impression I got. I understand that there's for the vast majority of people who thought that there should be, or there ought to be, better reforms, were thinking of defund the police as something more nuanced than that. I'm just telling you that in 2020, 2021, the vibe I got from the loudest voices, they're like, no, let's cut. We don't need police anymore. And we kind of saw that happen in Portland and Minneapolis. I think it was Minneapolis, and I don't know if that turned out okay, but I just wanted to make that clarification. But thank you, Theodoric, for the Theodoric 93 for the $5. Driver Court Fiction 2024. No, hell no. No. You will not catch me dead running for any political office. I have way too many. I have
Is he
far
talking
too
about you or me?
both. Apparently I'm your running mate. But I have way too many skeletons in my closet, so there's no way that you would
No
want me in.
kidding.
Look, look, I'm a YouTuber. I probably at some point in some time in the now 5+ years that I've been live streaming, that I probably said something that could be taken out of context easily and ruin a campaign. So there's no way in hell I'm going to do that.
You know, Artie, you're kind of making me want to like be a YouTuber or something.
Oh,
Have my own channel, or
it's all the rage these
talking with
days.
you.
It's all the rage these days for sure. Uh, so so I think we had a very good conversation. What I really liked talking about Turner versus Driver, and I think that comes out that kind of we can probably couch what we've been talking about with Turner versus Driver, in the sense of like a lot of the First Amendment auditors, a lot of the again I emphasize I mean, a lot of the smaller ones are still kind of tool bags. I'm trying to be as content friendly as I can, but not cursing too much. But even some of the smaller channels are still just as obnoxious as the big wigs. But there is this sense of that there's a level of dehumanization that I see that goes onto both sides of the equation, where, especially in the wake of 2020 onward, that there is a level of dehumanization that kind of goes into all sides, that police that where police will be treated as, like you said, faceless, jackbooted thugs with no emotion, no control, no sympathy, no mercy. And therefore, as auditors, you're allowed, you're given you have a God-given right to treat them like absolute garbage. Which I think is a reason why a lot of us in this community kind of push back, is because, cops are human, city workers are human. Nobody would accept this kind of behavior, especially when it becomes, because the only difference between a city clerk and a waiter or cashier at McDonald's is one is public and one is private. They're both service workers, and I think a lot of people have an inherent, or a lot of decent people have an inherent objection to people who treat service workers like garbage. And you see that a lot on YouTube. And at the same time, and so that's why there's a lot of pushback against it. At the same time, you have a different set that will go too far in the other direction, that they'll, the guy, he had a criminal record, he had certain stuff in his system anyway. I mean, who cares? Whatever. He was a dreg of society, so why should we care that if the police roughed him up for a little bit? And I think I think in my experience, there's a sense of dehumanization that comes with this every single time an incident like this happens, where you have a national news event where body cam footage comes out and people rush to judgment immediately. And I think part of good reform and part of community policing reform is to not to rehumanize the community and officers and law enforcement.
So let me comment on that, Artie. I can't speak for all agencies, and I will tell you, and it may come across as bragging, it's not. I've seen a lot of law enforcement agencies across the country. Fort Worth is one of the most progressive agencies, and when I say progressive, I don't mean politically liberal, conservative, progressive. I'm talking about progressive as far as quick to embrace the latest data-driven, evidence-based research on law enforcement and best practices and what we can do, community policing, utilizing, we were the first large agency, and when I mean large agency, an agency over 500 sworn personnel.
Mm-hmm.
We're the first large agency to actually put tasers on all of our uniformed officers. We were the first large agency to put body cameras on all of our officers and require them to record. Okay. So we are a very progressive agency in law enforcement progressive terms. So when you look at our agency, the community policing and all that stuff, what we do, everyone has been required to go through de-escalation training. On top of wearing the body cameras, on top of using the tasers, on top of all of us have gone through mental health training, how to recognize someone in mental health crisis. Again, I can't speak for other law enforcement agencies. I will assure you that we are top tier as far as training and getting all that training out to our officers. And I wish all agencies could, but there's also this thing about funding and being able to put officers on the street and that balance you have between taking an officer on the street to put them through training versus actually going out answering the calls for service and doing the job that we're paid to do. But in our agency, the big push is, hey, look, this person that we're dealing with is a person. We work very hard to push against this depersonalization of the individual and identify them as individuals. Most of the time when we show up on a scene, even if it's a person who's committed a crime, most of the time the reason that person committed crime is because something's really off the rails in their life. It's just bottom line. Someone goes out and commits a robbery, they ain't doing it just because they hit the lottery last week. They're doing it because there's something going wrong in their life that makes them think they need to go commit a robbery. That doesn't mean that we don't do the job that we're paid to do, which the police, a lot of people forget, we're just the enforcement arm of our government. State government, our state Congress is the one who determines the laws. We're just the enforcement arm. Right? If you don't like the law, well, go gripe to your congressperson, because they're the ones that actually voted this law into, in.
Well, I think the unfortunate reality is for most of these folks, and I agree with you. I think another problem that we have with that situation is that people tend to nationalize everything, every singular issue, and for whatever reason, people want to nationalize law enforcement matters, when at the end of the day, it's the mayor who tends to choose the police chief.
Yes.
But people
On that,
people
you
wouldn't.
mentioned nationalization. I pray to God we never nationalize.
No. When I mean nationalization, I don't mean like actually like having the feds take over all law enforcement. What I mean by nationalization is like
that.
no. What I mean by nationalization is they tend to nationalize local politics. In other words, they nationalize a political issue, as in policing,
That's
where
correct.
where for whatever reason they get up in arms about Congress, like federal Congress, when in reality the people who are most in control of your local law enforcement is your mayor and city council. But they couldn't name a single member of those offices.
Absolutely, and I tell people the government entity that has the most control over our lives is our city council and our mayor. That's the reality. Okay, national politics for the most part has very little effect on what we do. State and local is where the big pinch is. But as far as law enforcement, back to my point, we preach to our officers, look, when people are fighting you and they're upset with you, they don't know you from Adam. All they see is this blue uniform and a badge. They couldn't pick your face out of a lineup half the time. So with that, when me talking to my officers, you can't take it personally. This person's having a bad day, and yeah, they've done some bad stuff, and we're compelled. We have to, we got to enforce the law here. No, a guy beats up his wife or goes out and, DWI or whatever have you. Okay, we got to enforce the law, but understand that this person, when they're, you know, bumping their gums and running their head and calling you everything but a child of God, it's not you. It's the uniform you're wearing.
Yeah.
Don't take it personally.
Yeah, I imagine that has to be a pivotal part of training because because again, like I said, auditor the what we see from auditors, the kind of things they say to cops, and not even auditors, just your average suspect, who says this, that, and the other thing, about them, their family, and everything in between. To do everything they can to get the officer to retaliate, to fight back. And the problem is that it's only the officer who's probably going to get in trouble for it. I think it's just an unfortunate reality that police have to deal with, but they have to deal with it. And it's because it's part of the profession. It comes with the job, as it were. It comes with the profession.
It does.
But I do want to thank you. I think we're about 8:42, so I think we can wind down here. I know a lot of folks want me to introduce you to a particular individual named Chili DeCastro, but I'm not going to put you through that.
I don't even know who that is.
Good. I'm going. I am no. No. Please don't. I would love for you to stay in blissful.
You can look him up. Okay.
I want you to stay in blissful ignorance. But unfortunately, Doug may end up having to show you later on, because he can't help it. But let me go through these last couple of super chats. Paul Berry, $5. Has anybody in authority pushed back on YouTube to try and get bad behavior demonetized? I think we actually literally just talked about that. Paul.
What is that?
Paul Berry, $5. Has anybody in authority pushed back on YouTube to try and get bad behavior demonetized? You said exactly that. Yeah. Paul, if you go back previously, he talks exactly about that issue.
Yes, someone actually demonetized. Law enforcement agency called YouTube and got them demonetized for consistently, like they got arrested like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah. Persnickety, $4.99. Is it training or mostly instinct that lets cops go from guns drawn to "Are you okay?" within seconds?
I would say both. So guns drawn is training. Disclaimer, for whatever it is, dislike, whatever. I was in a shooting. I was about a year and a half on the job. I ended up having to shoot and kill a guy. He was stabbing his wife at the time with a big butcher knife, but so it's justified. But the reality is, going from guns drawn, the guns drawn thing it had been beaten into me from the training so much that this happens, you do this, and it's A plus B equals C equal, so that was an instinctive thing because of the training. However, "Are you okay?" That's just human nature.
Mm-hmm.
In that shooting, I ended up, the woman who got stabbed, she was a large woman, and adrenaline dump, whatever. I picked her up like she was a baby, carried her outside, and put her up front, and then, the next day dealt with the soreness or whatever. But at the same time, it was human nature to deal with the caretaking. What can I do to take care of this person? And there have been several instances where I've ended up, dealing with someone who initially was a threat to me. But once that threat was over, the guns are put away. Now it's, how can we get you through this crisis that you're experiencing right now?
Right.
That's not a training issue. That's being a person. In human nature, I'm a big optimist and a big proponent for good wins. Good wins. Good will always win at the end of the day. Good will win. And I think most of the police officers out there feel the same way. So
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Mental health services for officers.
Yep. Thank you, Deacon,
Yeah,
for the
we do.
$5.
Actually, recently, Deacon Fatal put out the $5 thing. Does your station have mental health services for officers? Yeah, we do. We have a lot of voluntary services, but at the same time, if an officer finds himself in trouble because they violated general orders or they're off the track, whatever have you, we need to rein them back in. We can also mandate mental health services for them.
Yeah, I was going to say that in New Jersey they have what's called an early warning system.
We have that as well.
Okay, so so you know exactly what it is. Where there are certain factors, certain incidences, and certain factors that go into an assessment
Yep.
that'll,
Yep, we have the whole ranking system,
yeah,
and we get notified when, hey, this officer's had a bunch of use of forces or a couple rudeness complaints, and maybe time to talk to him. But
or even externally that they're going through something personal that's going on with them. A lot of the factors that go into it, and where okay, I think it's good for us to step in, talk to them, and potentially put them on a track to either they need to step away from patrol and go into desk, or to go and encourage some mental health services. So I didn't know if
Sure.
I don't know if that Texas had something similar, but I know New Jersey has that system in place for officers.
all right.
But I think this was one of my I feel like this was one of my best streams that I've done with the interview. I think I really appreciate you coming in to talk with me. I feel like
You're welcome.
both myself and the chat learned a whole lot. Um,
I hope so.
and
I hope we all come away from it, at least with some positive.
absolutely, I agree.
If I had one thing to close with, it's understand that, okay, everyone's, cops, jackbooted thugs, whatever, blah, blah, blah. If you want to change policing, go be a police officer or recruit your friends to go be police officers. But the reality is, police officers come from our community. It's not like we're set aside in youth and given this brainwashing crap. We come from the community and we get into law enforcement. We don't do it for the pay, I'll tell you that. We do it because we have a heart for service. We want to do some sort of a career that will impact our community in a positive manner. And no, we don't get it right all the time. We don't always get it right. But that's the thing about being humans. And if you look at law enforcement versus any other profession, I will tell you, in law enforcement, you look at law enforcement, the national average when I came on, and I imagine it hasn't changed a lot since then, was 1.3% were bad apples. As opposed to about 2.6 of the clergy was bad apples. Okay? And in law enforcement, here's the difference. The other, 98.7% work diligently to remove those 1.3 bad apples from our group, because we cannot have them in here polluting what we do, because our mission is so critical and what we are doing is so important. We cannot have the bad amongst us to pollute the rest of us.
Right. I agree. That's people forget what that idiom is supposed to say. A few bad apples spoil the bunch. A few bad apples, if they're left to fester, it's going to ruin the entirety of the bundle. But I want to say, like, it's a lot of it is about the understanding that police are never going to get it 100% right, but it's always about
Yeah. We're
well, you're right, but it's always about making sure that accountability is had. And
But I will
about
tell you, Art, so let's talk about that real briefly. So police can't get it 100% right. Do you really want us to be 100% right? Because if you do, that means you're taking away discretion from us to let you off with a warning when you were speeding or doing XYZ or whatever. If we take away any discretion, if we take away the human element, we take away discretion. And if we take away discretion, everything becomes black and white. And you either committed this crime or you didn't. You broke the law or you didn't. If you broke the law, you pay a penalty. Do we want that in our society?
No.
And my answer is, I don't. I want the human element in our policing to say, yeah, I get it. And I'm not talking about, oh, you beat the crap out of your wife, so we're just going to look the other way and, hey, maybe you need to go somewhere else for the night.
Right.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, oh, you're racing you were speeding. Yeah, okay, your wife's pregnant and she's about to have a baby in the passenger seat. Hold on while I write you this ticket. We don't want that.
Right.
We want that human element and the compassion that comes with it.
Right. My brother said something similar, but that's not necessarily what I'm talking about necessarily. I actually don't have necessarily the issue of having that level of discretion, both at the law enforcement side and at the prosecutor side. I'm not talking about it at all. What I'm more talking about is the full understanding that police and prosecutors are human. They are infallible. They are absolutely fallible. They are subject to getting it wrong. But I think what people ask for and people are wanting is, yes, we understand that cops are human and they can do wrong, but we want to be able to be understanding that wrongdoing is accounted for. And that
absolutely
bad cops
we are the biggest proponents of that.
Right. And that bad cops are held to account for messing up. Not that all cops have to be perfect, but that those cops who do the wrong thing are held to account and not left to fester in the existing system without some level of accountability, or that no reforms are done to do better next time. I think that's what people are asking for more so than asking for perfection. You know what I mean?
And I will tell you, the rank and file officers, and I can't speak for other agencies because I'm not in other agencies. I know in my agencies and in the other agencies, the people that I have talked to, they have the same feelings, and that is, we are the biggest group to try and weed out those that are bad apples in our midst. Because we don't want them think about it. If you're a cop and you go to a call and the guy before you who showed up there was rude, beat someone, without justification, whatever have you, and I show up and they're pissed off at me and I don't know them, and it's because some knucklehead before me tainted that relationship.
Mm.
I want that guy gone. I don't want to have to deal with the complications that his dumbassery, if you will, created for me.
Yeah. I think understanding that, that these kinds of guys, they make it harder for everybody else. And but yeah, I think we're definitely on the same page. But Deacon $5, she has to ask, what's your favorite band?
Something says I should say the Police, but no, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. My favorite,
a little too on the nose there.
Yeah, I know. That's funny. Goodness. The Texas music scene's got me. Wade Bowen or Stoney LaRue. Those are my go-tos right now. I am going down to Florida next month to the Tortuga Music Festival with Eric Church, Kenny Chesney, and of all things, it's like mostly country artists and mostly Texas country, but Wiz Khalifa's there. Go figure.
Nice. Go figure. Yeah.
But anyway, no, I'm a big fan of Texas country. That raw. There's a difference between that and Nashville country. There's just a rawness there that really
right on.
me.
Well, hey, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. Um, I think that, again, like I said before, this is probably one of my best live streams I've done in a long time. So thank you very much. Thank you,
Right on.
Doug. Thank you, Doug, for being able to set this up for us for sure. But yeah. You said you had a blog. You want to shout out your blog before we finish up?
Um, shit, I don't know. Sorry, I'm not supposed to swear on this. Um,
Well, no, YouTube
Well,
finally
that
decided
blog,
not.
I'll throw it out there. Let me see if I can find this dang thing first. Let's see. Go to the reading list. It's been so long since I've been on there. It was, where's that at? I don't know. I'll give it to you later. You can throw it out there if you want.
Right on, no problem, man.
Yeah, it was just my experience in Thailand. So I went to Thailand for 3 months. Rotary sent me to learn about how to make peace. Now, I was at the time I was doing this community engagement project. That's what got me into Rotary, and um, they sent me to Thailand, and it was like a semester of master's work in peace studies,
mhm.
and it was truly wonderful. I got to tell you that my goal at the time was to take that back into our inner city community, refine it a little bit, and turn it into something. I mean, this is UN level. Okay, the shooting war's over. Now we still have the conflict. How do we resolve that to
Right,
create peace?
for sure.
And I think that we have that same issue in all of our inner cities. And the reality behind that is the biggest issue is just listening to what are the issues,
Oh
what are
yeah,
the problems. Listening and
yeah.
saying, because in my county alone, there's over 7,000 nonprofits. If you got an issue, I guarantee you there's someone out there with a nonprofit that can fix it.
Yeah.
But the problem is nobody communicates.
Yep.
Everyone's siloed up, and then you as a consumer got to identify your own problems and and find out who services them and get in front of them.
Yeah.
So
I could
I'll
agree
find the
more.
blog. I'll send it to you. You can post it
Right
up on
on.
your channel.
Absolutely. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. I feel like listening, and effective communication, probably would do
That's the biggest thing is
far greater.
communication, being
Yeah,
able to talk to each other and bring and that's a level playing field.
absolutely. But hey, thank you very much. Um, you know what? If I next time I'm down in Texas, you, Doug, and I, we got to go meet up. And
Hit me up. I'm over Air One, our police helicopter. I'll get you a ride, man.
right on. I love it. Hey, I gotta ride along with my brother once. I might as well go for the helicopter this time.
Good time.
All right. Well, take care, man. Thank you very much, and have a good
All
one.
right, you too.
Adios. All right. Well, I think that was a great one. That was a pretty awesome, awesome discussion. Um, Again, shout out to you, Doug, for putting it together. Uh, yeah, it was great. I think I learned a lot. I hope you guys learned a lot as well. And so tomorrow, no stream, as per usual, but I'll be back on Friday, for our usual. And please hit that like button on your way out, of course. And check out my Discord. And again, thank you all of you for the super chats today. Really appreciate the support. And yeah, if once he sends me the blog link, I'll definitely show it. Archer, Archer, come here. Archer, come here. Archer, Archer, come here. No, Archer does not want to join. I'm sorry, guys. But thanks, guys. Have a good one, and I'll catch you next time. The kitties do not want to. He keeps like stalking at the door. He doesn't want to come in. He wants me to just feed him. Yeah. Bad kitty. Archer. Yeah, see, he doesn't want it. All right. Have a good night, guys. Take care. Adios.
Tell me what you